In a bustling square in Mexico City, the very air seems to vibrate. It's a symphony of sound and color, a living mosaic of human faith. Thousands of people, from elderly women clutching rosaries with weathered hands to young men with portraits tattooed on their arms, gather with their faces upturned. Their collective gaze is fixed on a colossal, flower-draped float carrying an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. As it glides through the streets, a wave of emotion washes over the crowd. Tears stream down faces, prayers are whispered with breathless intensity, and hymns rise to meet the sky. The air crackles with fervent devotion, a powerful, almost tangible energy that speaks to a relationship far deeper than mere religious observance. This is not just a parade, it is a profound act of communion with a figure who is at once a national symbol, a spiritual mother, and a queen of the heavens. For millions here and billions around the world, the Virgin Mary is the compassionate heart of Christianity, the ultimate intercessor who bridges the chasm between the human and the divine. Her power is undeniable and global. We see it in the quiet grottos of Lourdes, France, where pilgrims seek healing from waters blessed by her apparition. We see it in the hushed reverence of Fatima, Portugal, where she is believed to have shared prophecies that shaped 20th century history. She is the patroness of countless nations, the inspiration for some of the world's most sublime art and music, from Michelangelo's Pietà to Schubert's Ave Maria. Her titles alone reveal her elevated status: O God-bearer, Queen of Angels, Morning Star, Mystical Rose. Yet this raises a profound and challenging question. If we turn back the pages of the New Testament, the foundational texts of Christianity, we find a much more understated figure. The Gospels portray Mary as a young, devout Jewish woman from Nazareth, favored by God, who humbly accepts her role in the divine plan. She is present at key moments: the Nativity, the wedding at Cana, where she prompts Jesus' first miracle, and most poignantly, at the foot of the cross, a grieving mother witnessing her son's agony. Her biblical appearances are significant, but they are also sparse. She writes no epistles, delivers no public sermons, and founds no churches. So how did this humble woman from Galilee ascend to such an extraordinary position of power and veneration within a strictly monotheistic tradition that, in principle, forbids the worship of any being other than God? The Catholic and Orthodox churches make a careful theological distinction, clarifying that Mary is offered revelini, a unique and supreme level of veneration, not worship, due to God alone. Yet for many on the ground, in the lived experience of faith, that line can feel blurred. The intensity of Marian devotion often mirrors the worship directed at goddesses in other religions. This has not gone unnoticed by theologians and historians. Marina Warner, in her seminal work, meticulously charts how Mary's figure absorbed attributes and roles that fulfilled a deep-seated human need for a divine feminine principle, a need left vacant in a faith centered on a father and a son. This elevation wasn't instantaneous. It was a gradual, centuries-long process, shaped by popular piety, theological debate, and the cultural currents of the world in which Christianity grew. The doctrines that define her exalted status today, her immaculate conception, her perpetual virginity, her assumption into heaven, were not codified for centuries, and in some cases, over a millennium after her life. This remarkable transformation demands we look beyond the confines of the established narrative. It compels us to ask, what ancient currents, what pre-existing streams of belief and imagery, perhaps forgotten or deliberately obscured, fed this extraordinary river of devotion, elevating Mary to a status that seems to transcend the very texts from which her story originates?
Deepening our inquiry into Mary's extraordinary veneration, we must journey back in time, away from the cathedrals of Europe and into the sun-baked sands of ancient Egypt and the bustling, multicultural ports of the Roman Empire. Imagine yourself as a traveler in the 1st century BC, walking through the vibrant streets of Alexandria or the port of Puteoli in Italy. You would be surrounded by a pantheon of gods, but one figure would be almost ubiquitous: Isis, the great mother goddess. Her temples were centers of vibrant worship, her priests clad in white linen, her festivals marked by both solemn ritual and joyous celebration. Her iconic image, often depicting her tenderly nursing the infant Horus, was a universal symbol of divine motherhood, life-giving protection, and the promise of rebirth. This wasn't a niche local deity. By the time of Jesus, the cult of Isis had spread from its Nilotic origins to become one of the most popular and personal religions in the entire Mediterranean world, appealing to senators, slaves, men and women alike. Her story, a powerful drama of love, loss, and redemption, resonated deeply. She was the faithful wife who tirelessly searched for the scattered pieces of her murdered husband. She was the grieving widow whose tears were said to cause the flooding of the Nile, bringing life back to the land. And most importantly, she was the magical, protective mother who hid her divine son, Horus, from his enemies and raised him to become the rightful king. Through her, devotees found a goddess who understood suffering, who offered compassion, and who promised salvation and eternal life. It is within this rich mythological and devotional context that scholars, beginning with pioneers like Sir Flinders Petrie and E.A. Wallace Budge in the early 20th century, began to meticulously document a series of striking, almost startling parallels with the developing cult of the Virgin Mary. The similarities were not just thematic, they were specific and concrete. Let's examine the evidence. First, the epithets. Isis was widely hailed across the Roman Empire with titles that would later become cornerstones of Marian devotion. She was called Kio Matre Hevenes, or Queen of Heaven, a title reflecting her supreme cosmic status. She was known as Tea Arstar, the Star of the Sea, a beacon of hope for sailors navigating treacherous waters, a title that would be directly applied to Mary in a famous 9th century hymn. Most significantly, she was revered as Mathati, which translates from Egyptian as Mother of God, a direct precursor to the Greek title Theokatelis, which became a central point of Christian debate and was officially granted to Mary at the Council of Ephesus in 431 AD. The iconographic parallels are even more visually compelling. The image of Harasutli, the nursing Isis, became a standard artistic motif throughout the Hellenistic world. Early Coptic Christians in Egypt, the very region where the cult of Isis was most deeply rooted, produced some of the first depictions of the Virgin and Child. In these images, Mary is often shown enthroned, facing forward, holding the infant Jesus on her lap, in a formal, hieratic pose that is virtually indistinguishable from the millennia-old depictions of Isis and Horus. As the art historian R.E. Witt noted in his book, the ancient representation of Isis suckling the infant Horus may have been a prototype for some of the earliest portrayals of the Madonna and Child. Was this all mere coincidence? A simple case of two different cultures independently developing a universal archetype of divine motherhood? Or was something more profound at play? Did the widespread, deeply felt veneration of Isis provide a pre-existing cultural and psychological template, a ready-made language of devotion that early Christian communities, consciously or unconsciously, adapted to express their growing reverence for the Mother of their Lord? If these parallels are more than just a passing resemblance, it forces us to confront an even more complex question. How did early Christian leaders and thinkers navigate such a profound syncretism, and what resistance did it face from those who sought to build a new faith, distinct from the pagan world it aimed to replace? From the striking echoes of Isis in Mary's titles and image, we now confront the challenging, and for some, uncomfortable, question of how these influences were absorbed. This wasn't a formal committee decision or a secret conspiracy, as the more sensationalist narratives might suggest. To understand it, we must picture the complex reality of the 4th and 5th centuries. Imagine an early Christian council, perhaps the pivotal one at Ephesus in 431 AD. Inside, bishops in heated debate hammer out the precise theological language to define Mary's role, officially declaring her Theotokos, the God-bearer. But just outside the council walls, the cultural air is still thick with the legacy of the old ways. The city of Ephesus itself had for centuries been home to one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the colossal temple of Artemis, another powerful virgin mother goddess. While that temple may have been in decline, its influence, its very spiritual memory, lingered in the collective consciousness of the populace. The process that unfolded is known to historians as Syncretism, the practice of absorbing and reinterpreting pagan sites, symbols, festivals, and even divine attributes through a Christian lens. This was often a pragmatic strategy. Pope Gregory the Great, writing around the year 600, famously instructed his missionaries in Britain not to destroy pagan temples, but to purify them with holy water, build altars, and rededicate them to the Christian God. His reasoning was clear, that the people, seeing that their temples are not destroyed, may abandon their error, and, flocking more readily to their accustomed places, may come to know and adore the true God. This same principle applied not just to buildings, but to beliefs. When new converts entered the church, they didn't simply erase their entire cultural and spiritual heritage. They brought their devotional habits, their archetypes, and their deep-seated need for familiar forms of religious expression with them. The powerful, compassionate, and maternal figure of Isis provided a perfect vessel for these sentiments. The love and reverence formerly directed towards her could be seamlessly transferred to Mary, who was now presented as the true Queen of Heaven, the true Mother of God. The forbidden aspect of this history, therefore, isn't about a hidden cabal plotting to deceive believers. It is forbidden in the sense that it has been largely omitted from popular Sunday school teachings and catechisms, which often prefer a simplified, idealized narrative of a faith that emerged fully formed and pure, untouched by the world around it. It challenges the comforting notion of an unbroken, hermetically sealed tradition. Acknowledging this historical reality of syncretism does not, for many, diminish faith. Instead, it can enrich it, revealing Christianity not as a static revelation dropped from the sky, but as a living, breathing tradition that engaged dynamically with the cultures it encountered. It demonstrates a faith confident enough to absorb powerful symbols and reinvest them with new Christian meaning. The image of the Divine Mother and Child, a motif that stretches back long before Isis to the dawn of civilization, was not so much copied as it was in the Christian understanding, pointing to the ultimate incarnation of God in human form. This journey into Mary's deep past challenges us to think more critically about the nature of religious identity itself. Is a belief less authentic if its forms of expression have historical roots in other traditions? Or does this reveal a universal human quest for certain aspects of the divine, for mercy, for protection, for the unconditional love embodied in a mother? This historical investigation, tracing a line from an Egyptian goddess to the Christian Queen of Heaven, ultimately invites us to consider not just where our beliefs come from, but how they live, evolve, and continually reshape our understanding of the sacred. It reveals the enduring, cross-cultural power of the divine feminine, a force that finds expression time and again, whether in the temples of ancient Memphis or the basilicas of modern Rome, continually calling humanity to a vision of a more compassionate and nurturing cosmos.